Welcome to Experts Unleashed, a podcast that aims to uncover how professionals and entrepreneurs transform their experience into income while making a positive impact in the world. I'm your host, Joel Irway, and over the past 4 years, I've helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses to grow past 6 and 7 figures per year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service, and this podcast will show you how to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a big team. So, let's get started. What's going on, experts? Joel Irway here with another episode of Experts Unleashed. And today, you are going to hear a fantastic interview that I just had with Dr. Stacy Berman from The System by Stacy. Now, we went into some pretty interesting conversations during this interview, including quantum physics, getting your doctorate before getting your master's, and how this all ties together, and why I feel Dr. Stacy may have been the inventor of CrossFit. Now, it's really fascinating to hear these stories of opportunity as they present themselves. And so I want you to pay attention to this interview because you're going to learn a lot of really interesting things and a lot of hurdles that she had to overcome throughout her career. So if you're in a state right now where you are considering doing something different or considering growing or starting something new, I think this is going to be very, very relevant as we go deep into how Stacy has launched her supplement line after she had a very successful 16-year bootcamp. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. I know you're going to love it. Stacy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joel. I'm so happy to be here and to share my experience with you.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. This is going to be a great episode. I've already been going through your stuff, and I'm really, really pumped. So, introduce yourself. Explain to our audience what you currently do now. What is your business, and give them an idea for where you are today.
Okay, so right now I'm a doctor of natural medicine, and I work with people to relieve their physical pains and self-perception and just create an all-over higher level of health than they have previously had. That's one part of it. The other part of it is I founded The System by Stacy, which is a luxury line of organic whey protein powders designed to help you love yourself from the inside out. Sorry, had to go there.
Totally cool. So like you sell these products, right? And so I'm looking at it right now. You've got magic shakes. And so explain what's in one magic shake real quick.
In essence, the magic shakes are organic whey protein powder from grass-fed cows. It's cold processed, non-GMO, non-soy, non-gluten, high protein.
Healthy stuff.
Healthy stuff. Exactly. Exactly. All the good stuff.
Cool. So as my listeners know, the whole purpose of what I do on this podcast and what they want to know is it's all about how you got to where you are today through spotting and seizing different opportunity shifts. So I want to rewind. Let's go back to your first kind of like professional gig. Well, first of all, I want to know you've got a PhD, right?
Yep.
PhD in you're a doctor of natural medicine, but yet you're running your own business now. So when did you get your PhD?
So I got my PhD last year, 2017, but really I would say I've been on this path my whole life. And what I mean by that is ever since I was young, I was always very interested in health, but at the time, my young brain kind of thought about health as exercise. So I used to do martial arts with my dad. I grew up in that kind of community. I was always fascinated by the body and its movements. When I was going to school for the first time, I was like, I don't know what I should, major in. And one of my friends, knowing that I've always been into fitness, said, why don't you become a trainer? And at that time, I had no idea that that was even a possibility. So I went ahead and I got multiple certifications. And then I went to school for psychology and health education. And then wound up working for different gyms throughout New York City, becoming a master trainer. And then from there, I was like, why am I doing this for someone else? Why don't I
So when is, I'm going to pause real quick.
Yeah.
When is this? Like, so you want to become a trainer, you've got all your certifications and you're working your way up.
Yeah.
Are you still going to school at this time, or have you graduated? Are you out of school? Where are we in your life?
I was just about finishing school. So I had gotten all the certifications that qualified me to become a trainer. And then I graduated first degree, bachelor's degree in 2000, but I started Stacy's Bootcamp in 1999, which seems so far away now.
So so while you're going to school, you were a trainer. So you were a trainer on the side?
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. So what type of, this is probably a dumb question because I've never hired a personal trainer, right? So are there different types of personal trainers, or is it kind of like, I'm just going to help you get in shape?
No, there are definitely different types of trainers. There are some that focus on bodybuilding. There are some that focus on yoga or Pilates. There are some like me who focus on body weight and more functional exercises. There are trainers that do spinning. So, you have to have a general knowledge of how the body works and moves, but then you'll typically specialize in one or a few different categories.
So what did you specialize in?
On body weight movements and functional exercises. So again, coming from the background that I did, martial arts, we didn't use any equipment. Our body was the machine, and the gym or the dojang, or that was the environment. That was the gym itself. So I've always been fascinated with the ability of the physical body to do so much more than we think it can.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that we believe we are limited physically, and of course we do have physical limitations. But in my own experience growing up doing martial arts, as well as in my experience working with people, our potential is so much greater than what we actually typically see and experience. We can do so much more than walk and sit and stand. I mean, it's amazing. I've worked with people who sometimes are in their 70s and 80s who have had hip replacement surgeries, and, survivors from breast cancer. And, next thing we know, they're doing push-ups. And, it's just, you wouldn't imagine that an 80-year-old woman can do push-ups. And here she is doing full-on push-ups. So again, I think that I like to get people to that point of realizing that they could do a lot more than they think they can. And then, of course, I think it extends beyond just the physical. If they didn't think they could do push-ups and then they do 10 push-ups, it kind of brings the question into their mind, well, what else can I do that I didn't think I could do?
Love it. I love that question. What else? That's such a powerful question. It's like, oh, I've pushed the limit here. I've achieved a plateau, or something's happened. Like, what else? That always spurns more thought process. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you graduated in 2000. You're working as a personal trainer, mostly to do body weight movements and functional exercises.
Yeah.
You had mentioned you're kind of working your way through the ranks and seeing the potential.
Right.
And I know that in 1999 you started Stacy's Bootcamp. So talk about the genesis of that, how it came about, and let's go there.
So that really came about because, like I said, the first question in my head was, why am I making so much money for other people when I could make it for myself? And also, working in a gym, you get two types of people in general. I mean, of course, we know there's lots of different types of people, but for this discussion, let's say two basic types of people. Ones that come consistently, you see them almost every day there, but their bodies don't necessarily change that much. They kind of do the same machines, the same intensity, the same thing day in and day out. Then you get the ones who come in January for, New Year's resolutions, and or like May, June for bikini season, summer weather. And they come for a month or two and then, they fall off. So just, being in that environment and seeing that pattern, and then also coming from the martial arts background, and knowing that the body can do so much more, I thought, there's a way better way to do this fitness thing. And I'm going to try it. So really, Bootcamp just started as me taking some of my one-on-one clients out into the park. And from there, it built. People saw me in the park and they were like, what are you doing? What is this burpee thing you're doing? And what is this bear crawl? And, I was like, all right, let me make some business cards. And then I handed out the business cards. And from there, it grew from, 3 or 4 of my private clients to, and the first time when I first started official, Stacy's Bootcamp, it was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5:30 a.m., which is a very early time. And it grew from, people saw that, they were like, we want to come, but there's no way we're coming at 5:30. So I was like, okay, let me try 7 a.m. And so I did a 5:30 and 7 a.m. Then I offered evening classes. Then there were people who lived, not so close to Central Park. So I started one in Battery Park, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx. So it kind of just expanded based off of demand.
So I think what you're telling me is you invented CrossFit.
In essence, I did. God damn it. In essence, yes.
And was this your full-time gig? Were you doing this full-time?
Awesome. Yeah.
So that was 1999. How many years did you do that?
So I did that up until probably about 15 or 16 years.
Okay, awesome. So that takes us to roughly 2015.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. It's a long time.
It was. It was a long time. I say
long time because as entrepreneurs, most of us, shiny object syndrome, we last for like 6 months.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because I built this thing up. It was my baby. It was my, and I built relationships with all the people that I trained, and I built relationships, in the park of like the people who would always come and walk their dogs. And like, I knew all their dogs and I knew them and I saw them have children. So it became not just my company, it became a network and a community of people. So I think that was one of the things that was really hard for me to leave, because I felt like I was partly letting people down, but also missing that, camaraderie of people that I would see every day.
How did that evolve over 15 years? I mean, if you look at like the first year and how it was operating versus the last year and how it was operating, like what were some big shifts in terms of just itself, Stacy's Bootcamp as a whole? I mean, did it was it functioning kind of like in theory the same way, like you're still doing the exercises, or did you see ways to improve it over the years? I'm assuming something had to have changed over 15 years.
Yeah. Well, so this is actually an interesting question, because outside of the growth of the class, what I found was as Stacy's Bootcamp became more popular. Wait, let me back up for a sec. One of the major shifts that happened was I started getting a lot of press coverage. Because it was something new. There was nothing like this out there. Like I mentioned earlier, this was like one of the first boutique fitness classes in the country. So I was it in essence for a little while. And then there were a lot of copycats, and then other, like spin classes and yoga classes and all these other boutique fitness crazes kind of popped up. And
CrossFit.
Right. And so it was very interesting because my class started growing very organically. I didn't do any advertising. It was referral, word of mouth, PR stuff and media coverage. And at the point where I decided to leave, it was at a level where it was self-sufficient. I had hired other trainers to work the classes and everything, but I was and I hate to say this, but I was kind of over it. 15 years, I was done speaking about the like shiny pieces. But I had lost interest in it. And that's not to say I lost interest in the people or the class itself or the technique itself. I just was not growing anymore as an entrepreneur. I wasn't growing Professionally,
Mm-hmm.
I just was stagnant. And I felt like it was in some ways killing my soul, if that makes any sense. And so anyway, what wound up happening was by the time it got to that level, and by the time I was ready to leave, I was so over it that I didn't want to invest in any more time, money, or energy in kind of differentiating it from all of the other classes that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's one of the major things that I actually learned from having that first company and having that first business, was that brand story is so important, because when I first started, it was just me. So there was no other story. And then by the time I was like over it, there were so many other stories, and I had never really invested in brand differentiation because, like I said, I was the only one. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
it kind of does. I mean, yeah. I was really looking to see if there was, if there were any pivots inside of, like, as you were growing, but it kind of sounds like you just did your thing. It grew. I mean, you had the core things that you taught, you did the classes, but deep down, something was pulling at you at the end,
Yeah.
Let me ask this then. So when did that urge start to pull you away from, not pull you away from Stacy's Bootcamp, but like, when did those seeds start manifesting?
Yeah.
Like, I got to be looking for something else, or, where did that desire start to percolate?
I would say it probably started to percolate in probably 3 years before I really stopped. And that was, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, it was probably closer to 5 years before that I kind of just coasted for a little while. And then 3 years before I officially stopped, I was like, I gotta do something else. I gotta do something else here. And, part of that was the interaction with my clients and with me. What I was starting to realize is that, health is much more than just physical exercise. There are so many other components to being healthy. And I wanted to explore those things, which is kind of what led me to go back to school for my doctorate in natural medicine.
When did you start to pursue that? Was that like 3 years prior to leaving?
So that was in 2014.
Okay, so that's when you started to pursue that. So 2014. But in your mind, you're like, okay, I need to, like, it's time to start to explore.
Right.
So you went and you pursued and got your doctorate of natural medicine. So the ideas start to percolate. You know that you're going to be making a shift sooner or later. You start going back to school. Did you have any thoughts of like where you wanted to pursue? Because like right now, you've got the System by Stacy, which is awesome. But like, did you know right away that you wanted to get into nutrition?
So the thing with that is, so that again, all of this stuff happened very kind of organically for me. Bootcamp, I just kind of was like, let me take my clients out. And then it built up from there. And the system came out of part professional observation and part personal need. So what I mean by that is, professionally, I've worked with thousands of people in New York City who are super busy, either running businesses, partners in law firms, full-time moms, traveling all the time, and on and on. And what I found was, one, they can't outtrain their diet. So while they may have been running marathons or triathlons or coming to see me 3 times a week, that if they weren't eating right, they weren't actually getting to where they wanted to be physically and mentally. And simultaneously, a lot of them knew what they should be eating, but just didn't have time to like go shopping, prepare food, cook food, eat food, clean up. They just didn't have time. So I had that observation. And then personally, at about 36, 37, I started gaining weight, and I was already doing everything quote unquote right in terms of exercise and eating clean and drinking water. And I didn't even drink alcohol at the time. And I couldn't figure out how to lose the weight. So I went to see a nutritionist. He and I started working together, and we developed the base of what is now the system, which is an organic whey protein powder. And I started using it myself. And within about 2 or 3 months, I lost 16 pounds. I've kept it off. I didn't feel hungry throughout the day, which is really important because someone who's very active, if you start feeling hungry very quickly, you get grumpy and low energy and just, feel like you can't do anything. So anyway, I had so much success. Exactly.
That's me.
Yeah. So personally, I had a lot of success with the system, using it. And I thought to myself, well, if this works for me, someone who does everything quote unquote right, it's going to work for all of my clients. So then I had the idea, all right, let me see what happens with my clients. And I would give them little samples, kind of like a drug dealer. Here, try this. What do you think? And they loved it. And they started asking if if I could sell it to them. And, at that point I was like, sure, mixing it in my kitchen and giving it to them. And then their bodies started changing. And, all the feedback I got was really, really positive. And, after doing, in retrospect, what I call market research, at the time, it was just like, here, try this, I thought, okay, I think there's a market for this. And I think this is a viable product. It's something that people will want and use and love. So that's how I got the system.
Right. You found the need personally and within your clients. New York, the busiest city in America, in the world, probably, right? The busiest city in the world. So you see these people who are running around and they know they need to eat healthy, but they just can't do it because they're way too busy.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, starting a nutrition company, a supplement company, that's got to be a huge undertaking. There's a gap of 3 years before you actually left Stacy's bootcamp, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I would completely say it was scary as fuck, if you don't mind me saying it. It's funny because had someone 5 years earlier said, you're going to start like a nutrition line, I would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about. I do push-ups, So it was really scary. And I got to say, there was a lot of, I had done boot camp for 15 years. I was in Central Park at 5 a.m., rain or shine, sleet or snow. Most of the time it was dark out when I was in the park. And it had come to define not only me professionally, but me personally. I am boot camp. I am this hardcore, badass woman and hear me roar kind of thing. So when I left, I would say for 6 months, I was a bit shell-shocked because I didn't know how to define myself anymore. I had to redefine myself.
So you left before anything was even established.
Yeah. At that point, it was, still in the very beginning stages. I didn't have packaging. I didn't have a website. I didn't have much of anything. I just had this idea. I had positive feedback from the clients that I was selling it to. And I had a belief in myself and a passion for the product. And that's kind of what I rode on for a while.
Okay. So to me, I have a handful of friends that are in the supplement space and manufacture their own supplements and the whole 9 yards. My other business is information marketing and digital marketing. So I sell kind of like thin air, nothing tangible.
Right.
So when you get something tangible like this coffee mug here, I'm like, oh crap, I got to go talk to a manufacturer, or that's terrifying to me. What was the first big leap for you to get your first sample out? Tell me about that process. How did you find your manufacturer ingredient? There's so much there, right?
Yeah. So I was actually very, very lucky with that. I met this woman who I still work with, and she had experience within the beverage company, but within the beverage industry. Mm-hmm. She came out with a brand that was a non-alcoholic adult drink. And I started working with her as a business advisor. And she kind of had all the connections that I needed. So what I was doing before it got to like where it is now, where the system is now, I was doing in like very small commercial kitchen, like literally mixing, the protein and all the ingredients and then packaging it. And then I had to find larger suppliers. And so she had previously worked with a food, what are they called? I don't remember. The name is Natural Development, but they do food formulation and beverage formulation. So I worked with them to kind of reformulate what was already existing. And then they were able to connect me with larger suppliers so we could decrease our cost of goods. So it was really all, when we were talking about like opportunity, for me, all my opportunities have come from kind of long-term strategy of the network that I had. And I wouldn't even call it strategy. I knew someone who I had met in Bootcamp who ran a fitness blog. And then when she knew about the system, I gave her some samples. She was like, you should speak to Sarah. I spoke to Sarah, who is now my business advisor. And she's the one who introduced me to the Natural Development, the food formulation company. So it was kind of a long-term strategy, if you want to even call it that. But it was, again, very just organic. I found the right people at the right time, and they introduced me to the right people at the right time.
I love it. It's so interesting to see how this stuff develops, like how it all matriculates. And I don't want to say, where did you come up with the idea to create your own? I mean, would this be called a supplement line or no?
This is more of a meal replacement. It is a supplement. Yeah, it's a meal replacement. Yeah.
Okay, meal replacement. So I don't think we ever really discussed like how you came up with the not the idea, but like when was the commitment to saying, you know what, like here's the need, right? I want to go create a meal replacement, or I want to go, work in nutrition, like only like developing that. Like when did you kind of make that commitment? And the question that I want to tie to this is, did going back to school have any sort of correlation with your ultimate decision?
So the system as the product actually, I was on that path before I went back to school. And, again, the only thing I could say is it just really happened organically with the system. I had not planned to create a, supplement line. That was not in my realm of thinking at any point until the point where it worked for me and then it worked for my clients. And I was like, aha, this is something. And then once I saw that it worked, I was committed to it. And, if I wasn't committed to it, I probably would have jumped out a window a long time ago, because of course, as an entrepreneur, there's lots of, ups and downs. And there's sometimes like, is this going to work? And but I'm fully committed to it because I'm like, this works. This absolutely works. So in the ups and downs, there has never really been a moment where I wasn't committed. There was just kind of more anxiety than anything. And then when I went back to school, so the school that I went to, it's called Quantum University, and it's teaches these traditional forms of healing and health, but it teaches it through the principles of quantum physics. So it teaches what appears on the outside to be kind of woo-woo-ish practices, but through a scientific lens. So as I started getting deeper into natural medicine and understanding what's going on at the subatomic level, at the cellular level, and all that stuff, I realized that, what you put in your body is so important to not only your physical health, but your emotional, psychological health. And, if you believe in this, your spiritual health, because the food, the things that you put in your body are the fundamental building blocks of every function of the body. So going back to school just kind of reinforced the idea that I'm on the right path with the system.
So were you going back to school with the idea to help develop that professionally, meaning develop yourself professionally, like hoping that that would kind of lead to something? Or did you want to use this education kind of bolster your credibility for the system? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit of everything. I think that part of it was going back to school and getting a PhD. And I actually am in writing a book now based off of my research. So like it all kind of goes into the credibility of me as the brand. And then of course, when you have more credibility, people trust you, and then they're, more willing to buy your product or your service and listen to you. And also, the other thing I do besides the system is I do work one-on-one with people in order to help them heal mind, body, spirit, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. So kind of what I was saying earlier, at the time when I was younger and I started boot camp, I thought, to be healthy meant to exercise. And then as I got older, I realized, okay, it's not just exercise, it's nutrition too. And then I got older and I realized it's not just exercise and nutrition. There's a psychological and emotional component to health. And that if these things aren't in line or trying to be in line, then they have absolute, real, and measurable effects on everything else. So although it maybe seems a little piecemeal, the trajectory has always been towards this kind of optimal health state and helping people reach that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. From a natural standpoint, I think there's a lot of similarities from where you started. In the very first thing that you told me is when you were growing up, you were in, I think you said it was your father was in
Taekwondo.
Taekwondo. And I'm assuming there were no weights with that. It's all natural body movements.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like the genesis of all this. It's all tying together, to your natural health expertise.
Right.
And I mean, kudos to you going to school to learn about quantum physics and and starting a business. I mean, that sounds hellish.
It was at certain points. I was like, what am I doing?
That's why I was wondering, like, what the similarity was, like, because, why you were going to get your doctorate and starting a business. I'm like, was it the chicken and the egg? Are they all one? But I think your body needed that. Like your mental state clearly needed that, but you also need a deep understanding of what you were doing, which helps supplement everything. There's the pun. Helps supplement your supplement business, right?
Exactly. And like one of the experiences for me at a personal level, I used to have really, really bad back pain. And, I went to I did PT on myself. I saw a chiropractor and massage and acupuncturist and did x-rays and everything. And my spine was in alignment. There was no issue. And then I remember going out to Arizona and doing this, kind of week-long meditation retreat. And in meditation one day, I kind of had this conversation with the universe, if you want to call it. And in that moment, I felt some sort of electric impulse pass through my body, and my back completely released and never hurt again. So that experience personally made me wonder, what the F is going on? Like, how did something that I'm experiencing in my physical body completely release from a psychological experience? And so that was also another kind of thing that led me to want to go back to school, that I had all of these kind of experiences around the physical body that could not be explained in any logical way at the time anyway. So I had those experiences and I felt them and I knew they were real because they happened to me. On the other hand, I'm from New York and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, really, what's going on? So that's what kind of led me to going back to school, because I wanted to understand how something psychological could have affected my physical body? And how do I get that to work for other people?
And what's the solution? Quantum physics, clearly.
Obviously.
I love it. All right, so let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about, all right, you start your supplement line, you start the System by Stacy, and you mentioned that there's tons of ups and downs, and if you weren't committed, you would have jumped out a window by now. I think that was a quote. I'm not trying to say you would have jumped out a window. I'm pretty sure you said that at some point.
I did.
So tell me what some of those hurdles were. Like, what were some of those obstacles that you had to overcome?
I think one of the major obstacles, or most recent obstacles, we outgrew the facility that we were using and we moved to another facility. And, we're still a relatively small company. We're not, anything like the much larger, supplement lines on the market that you could find in GNC and stuff like that. And so we couldn't necessarily afford the co-packing facilities that maybe they could afford. Some of them were requesting like, we need to have 100,000 units a month and it has to be X amount per unit that we're charging. And like, we couldn't make that promise. So anyway, we found another co-packing location, which was much smaller, was very interested in growing their facility with us. It all sounded wonderful. They gave us a price that, we felt very comfortable with, that we could afford. Signed a contract, moved all of our supplies there. And there was something in the contract that the co-packer, I guess, didn't read, although we were upfront with them all the time and it was in the contract. And once he realized that, he had a bit of a mental breakdown and said, forget it. I'm not co-packing for you anymore. This is the last time. So again, I mean, we're in contract. So I knew, like, on one hand, you can't just break the contract like that. But on the other hand, of course, you don't want someone on your team that is not happy to be working with you. You want to, kind of smooth things over and work together to make sure everybody's happy. So that was one of the more recent setbacks, which wound up not even being a setback. We had a conversation and he just didn't understand that part of the contract. And once we, kind of went through it again with him, and because I was dedicated to the partnership, I went ahead and paid him up front for that first co-packing run that we did, so that he knew I was kind of committed to the relationship and all that. So that was one of the more recent hurdles that it's like, you just don't want anyone on the team exploding at any point. So that was one of the big kind of hurdles. Another one was initially when I started the system, I hired a relative. Don't ever do that. It's always a bad idea. And I kept her on for probably 2 years longer than I should have, because she was a relative and didn't know how to
sever the tie.
Yeah, navigate that. Like, we're going to have to see each other and talk to each other, and how will, I don't know. So anyway, it eventually, actually in December, we kind of parted ways professionally anyway. And in retrospect, it was probably the best thing we could have done for our relationship, because now we're back to just being, friends, relatives, and all that stuff. So those were two very big hurdles that I had to overcome. Now I'm we're doing a Series A fundraising. So that's for me, someone who, like I said, all of my businesses grew very organically. So this whole financial models and all of that stuff and speaking the lingo is challenging for me, because it's not anything, I'm in health. I'm a doctor of natural medicine. I'm a fitness expert. I have a line. I could talk to you about the ingredients in the line, but now that I have to kind of learn the language of, investment. So that's another hurdle that we're working through right now.
Are you developing anything, like, how are you leveraging currently your expertise, like your background in health and natural medicine, like how are you leveraging that now to develop further things specifically related to like what you love to do, health and wellness? Are you developing new products? I mean, getting away from like the business aspect, but how are you continuing to leverage all of your background in school and in your professional experience?
Yeah. So right now, what I'm doing outside of the system and working with clients, I'm also writing a book. And the title of the book is Love Yourself Naked, The Science of Self-Perception, Spirituality, and Weight Loss. And that idea came out of my dissertation research, actually, which is based off of the idea that self-perception affects your nervous system, your biochemistry, and how that affects your immunity and metabolism and therefore weight loss. So again, it's kind of piecemeal, but not really. I'm writing the book kind of feeds back into the brand, into the system as a brand, and into me as a doctor. So it's kind of this very interconnected web of health and also avenues for people to know my brand and know the product and know the service and read about the information.
What's the goal with it? Like, what's the goal with the book? Is it to fuel more brand awareness for the system or growing your personal brand? What do you hope?
Well, I hope the book, on a personal level, I think the book also kind of, it gets the brand, my personal brand, but also the system out there. So, the more kind of touch points you have, the more likely people are going to, buy your product or service. But also I think on a kind of personal level / purpose level, the book is geared towards women. Out of all of the women that I've worked with since 1999, no matter what they looked like on the outside, on the inside, they always had this negative dialogue going on in their head regarding what they looked like. And that stuff just takes up so much mental bandwidth. If we could just cancel, clear, and delete the nonsense self-perception issues, then you could free up so much more space to actually get shit done, to do what you should be, focusing on, not your 5 pounds if you're overweight or 100 pounds if you're overweight. That's, yes, your health is important and you want to feel good and you want to look good, but that's not the most important. The most important is actually doing what you're meant to be doing. So the kind of underlying goal outside of, brand awareness and, the touch points for people knowing me and my brand is to get women to recognize that they're pretty awesome people and to go forward in life as badass goddesses that they are.
I love it. So let me get this straight. So right now you're running a supplement company. You are writing a book. You recently finished getting your Doctor of Natural Medicine. Did you say you're also going to school for a bachelor's?
Oh, I'm also in school. I forgot. I'm also in a program in Columbia Business School. So I got accepted to this program that is for local vendors in Harlem, in New York City. I'm a local vendor in Harlem. So it, as part of the program, you get to go to Columbia Business School, and actually, talking about my more recent obstacles or hurdles that I'm overcoming, the whole financial language and all that stuff, I'm not so familiar with. So this program in Columbia Business School will give me the language and teach me, the methods and all that stuff. So yes, so I'm also doing that.
One of the key characteristics and traits of entrepreneurs and experts is we never stop learning. And while I don't think I will ever pursue a quantum physics degree or learning about quantum physics, I stopped at mechanical engineering, so that's quantum physics a little over my head. But how many more times are you going to keep going to school? Will it ever stop?
Gosh, every time I think I'm done with school, something else comes up. And, I love learning. I love reading. I love finding out new things. I love, a lot of times I go to programs, and a lot of it is reinforcing the things that I know, but there are also like golden nuggets that you could kind of integrate and expand your self, your company, your product, whatever it is. So I don't think I'll ever not be learning, but I think once I finish the Columbia thing, I may pause it at least for a little while.
Stacy, I've had a blast with our conversation. I think, based on your entire journey, even starting, with your dad, and it was Taekwondo, right?
Yeah.
Martial arts and Taekwondo. And that's obviously what has sprung you into this world of natural medicine, and just knowing that your body can do more, like your body has greater potential, that has set you on this unbelievable journey of now, launching Stacy's Bootcamp for 15 years and, working with people to help them achieve physical strength. And then, then the diet aspect and fueling your body, and then getting, in touch with, like, it all leads into one another. It's such a fascinating journey, fascinating story of, how to turn your expertise into income and seizing those opportunities. Where can people connect with you? Where can people find your stuff and go buy your supplements?
Yeah. So they could find me at thesystembystacey.com. That's where my product is, mostly online, although we are doing some distribution now in the US and actually a lot in the Middle East. So if you're in the Middle East listening to this, you could find me on the shelves there. And if you want to speak to me about, doing health consulting for you, email me at stacy@thesystembystacey.com.
Awesome. Stacy, did we leave anything else out that you wanted to make sure that we included in this interview, that it's important for my listeners to learn about you?
Well, the first thing that I would say, not necessarily about me, is just if you are an entrepreneur or you're thinking and you have an idea, I would say go for it. Even if it doesn't succeed, you will learn so much, and hopefully whatever you learn, you could go forward with and maybe start something else with. So my number one piece of advice is just go for it. If you waited till everything is in line, you'll probably never make it. So just go for it.
Awesome. Yeah. And I support it 100%. And even if it doesn't work out, it usually opens up other opportunities. And that's the whole name of the game.
Exactly.
So, and if you also want to connect with Stacy, just go to any library, go to any university. I'm sure she'll be there.
I'll be there.
And former, future classmate, I'm sure. So Stacy, I had a blast. We'll wrap up this episode. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I'm checking out your stuff right now, and I will be checking out later because I'm in the health kick right now, and trying to not be cranky when I get hungry during the day.
Well, if you need the System by Stacy,
there we go.
It will help. Excellent. Thank you so much, Joel. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. So, please go reach out. We'll wrap up today's episode. Go reach out to Stacy. Let her know that you heard her story and you learned all about her on Experts Unleashed, and give her a shout out and just connect with her and go follow what she's doing. She's doing some amazing stuff. She's way smarter than I am. So I know that you'll learn a whole lot more by following her website and her blog. So thanks again, Stacy. And for everyone else, we will talk to you soon. See you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. Now, if you want additional trainings and content outside of the podcast, I release exclusive video trainings on my Experts Unleashed YouTube channel. And if you'd like to come hang out with thousands of other fellow experts, join our Facebook group community where we do hangouts and webinars to help support you in your journey. Finally, if you'd like my personal help to develop, launch, or scale your business, contact me directly for private consulting opportunities to see if any spots are available. And you can find all of the information above at expertsunleashed.com.